E estamos ao vivo! Muito boa tarde a todos. Mais uma live aqui no canal. Lançamento da Axiom Space, galera. Com astronautas para a Estação Espacial Internacional. Missão privada da Europa. Vamos acompanhar aqui e ver o lançamento.
Let's take a look at what the ascent portion of today's mission will look like. Once we hit T-0, we'll launch Falcon 9 and Dragon liftoff from historic Launch Pad 39A, which you have a great view of right now, and begin to make their ascent. At about 43 seconds into flight, Falcon 9's engines will throttle down to help us pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. It's worth noting that once we hit max Q, the vehicle will be going supersonic, or faster than the speed of sound. Once we are through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our Merlin engines again. From there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that happen in rapid succession.
Salve, galera do chat!
MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 Merlin engines shut off in preparation for stage separation. Stage separation is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, with the first stage making its way back to Earth for landing, as the second stage continues on its journey with the third event. That's second engine start 1, or SES1, where the Merlin vacuum engine on board stage 2. Cloud venting from the vehicle in 30 seconds. Where the engine on stage 2 lights up
minha câmera do lado de cá.
stage, along with our AX-3 crew and Dragon into orbit. As stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, stage 1 will execute 3 burns.
Tá falando sobre a timeline do que vai acontecer. Lançamento, etc e tal. Aqui tá melhor que no Sacane, tem mais propagandas na tela do que foguetes. Não seja por isso, só para ficar igual o Sérgio, aqui está a viagem para a Islândia, que falta 1/4. Tem até algumas pessoas falando comigo aqui, mas a primeira que fechar vai. 1/4. Entra lá no site, que é uma viagem incrível. Pronto, agora tá igual a do Sérgio. Axiom Space é uma empresa. O Matheus, é uma empresa privada de voo espacial. Daí eles estão agora nessa missão, a X3, para levar astronautas para a Estação Espacial Internacional para realizar diversos experimentos científicos. E essa daqui é, digamos assim, especial em certo sentido, porque tem várias primeiras coisas acontecendo. O comandante, por exemplo, da missão é o Michael Lopes, acho que se fala assim, Alegria, que é espanhol e estadunidense ao mesmo tempo. Aí tem um cara que é o piloto, Walter Villaday, é da Itália. Tem o Alper, eu não sei falar esse nome, Alper Gezeravikt, que é da Turquia, vai ser o primeiro astronauta da Turquia, cara. E tem o Marcus Wandt, da Suécia.
Will have an opportunity to travel to space, whether it's low Earth orbit, the moon, Mars, or beyond. In the history of human spaceflight, less than 700 people have ever been to orbit. At SpaceX, we want to help create a future where not just hundreds of people, but thousands and ultimately millions of people can travel off Earth to live and work in space and on other planets. Last year, we flew 6 Dragon missions. This year, we could launch up to 8 missions, including 5 or 6 human spaceflight missions, and that's only going. Load has started.
O voo é com a SpaceX. Com a Dragon. Aquela nave ali é a Dragon ali em cima.
As I was saying, this year that could include 5 or 6 human spaceflight missions, and that's only going to increase in the future. Thus far, we've only launched crew missions from Launch Complex 39A, which is what you see on your screen now. However, to support our growing manifest of Dragon missions, we've recently made some new upgrades to our other Florida launch pad, Space Launch Complex 40, which you see there with a brand new crew access arm being
34 minutos para o lançamento. Deixa eu ver se tem algum delay aqui.
Meaning we'll have more opportunities to fly people on Dragon to orbit. If you're interested in helping us advance the future of human spaceflight and potentially fly on a future Dragon mission, check out spacex.com/humanspaceflight to learn more.
Tem pra caramba aí. Vou zerar o buffer.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the training that the crew has gone through in order to be ready for this mission. Altogether, the Axiom 3 mission crew spent about 30
eles aí,
inside Dragon, and crew members individually received additional training specific to their role, learning SpaceX protocols, ISS systems, and
Agora vai estar ao vivo, ó.
Preparing for the science
Pronto.
and outreach activities that they'll be conducting while in space. Private astronaut training is rigorous. To prepare the AX-3 crew for their mission, our teams here at SpaceX have spent the last several months teaching the crew about orbital mechanics, how to live in microgravity, and running simulations of full missions from inside our Dragon training capsules. The training program includes nearly 100 different lessons covering all aspects of flight. And if you're thinking it's kind of hard to tell what's the true training and what's the real capsule, that's true, because they're pretty much identical, and that's the point. The team also spent time at the launch pad, in the suit-up room, and working through emergency procedures that would be necessary in the unlikely event of a pad abort scenario. So let's take a further look at this crew in action.
Exactly. The crew spent extensive amounts of training time in historic Building 9 at the Johnson Space Center, learning from certified...
Thales mandou o primeiro superchat da live. Hime, tira uma dúvida. É possível nós estar vivendo dentro de um buraco negro? Já que toda matéria é sugada não sai, é possível gerar outro universo? Cara, isso é uma pura especulação e não tem suporte observacional para sustentar essa ideia, tá bom? Ainda que possa ser alguma ideia minimamente ok do ponto de vista físico-matemático, evidência observacional é zero.
Each module on orbit has its own nuances, so gaining insight into the specialties of their racks and modules is necessary, especially for this mission. Extensive training on station navigation, on-orbit familiarization, emergency response, and repetition of walking through processes and procedures all help the crew maximize every second that they have during their flight. Simulating science research, operations, and even
Tá falando do treinamento da galera.
lessons on the path to mission readiness. Now, the National Outdoor Leadership School, or NOLS, provides a very unique Earth-based experience for many astronauts before they fly. This is really a bonding experience for the crew. It can't be overstated how much teamwork factors into every aspect of their flight together, and this training in particular aims to thoroughly establish that. They also focus on survival skills, resilience, leadership, equally as important as followership, and overall teamwork to ensure they really are more than just passengers on the same rocket. The camping and outdoor adventure provides a solid foundation for the team to build on throughout their training.
Aliás, lá na Islândia, só para fazer a deixa para propaganda, lá na Islândia tem lugares onde a Agência Espacial da Europa, a ESA, organiza missões análogas para astronautas para treinamento. Eu vou ver se eu passo em alguns lugares lá para mostrar para vocês. Lembrando, há uma última vaga para nossa excursão para a Islândia. Se você quiser ir, entra aí no site, clica lá no grupo, no botão Quero Garantir Minha Vaga, que a gente fecha essa última vaga com você.
Now, at the end of it all, a mission patch is celebrated and it is hung in a tradition since the earliest days of spaceflight. So fittingly, as AX-3 heads to the International Space Station, the crew had the chance to be present for the patch-hanging ceremony of their mission patch in Building 9 on that module in Johnson Space Center. Spaceflight is a serious business, but moments of levity and celebration like this help everyone pause and reflect on the incredible accomplishments being achieved every day. No matter how many patches join a canvas like this one,
Os patches são bonitões.
because of the people who make it possible. The crew and those here on Earth supporting each mission. So now for more on each crew member's portfolio.
Eles ali se preparando. 29 minutos para o lançamento.
Chief Scientist, Dr. Lucy Lowe.
Building on the success from AX-1 and 2, now 3 has over 30 experiments, and some of them returning customers. Lucy, good
É nesses momentos É nesses conteúdos de ciência, foguete, tecnologia e tal que vocês devem apoiar. Não nas goiabadas. Então eu vou fazer o quê? Tô fazendo aqui a live. A galera não pede? Cadê os conteúdos de ciência? Tô fazendo, pô. Tô até colocando o patrocínio da Insider aqui em cima. Que é para tentar mostrar para a Insider que eles têm que patrocinar esse tipo de conteúdo aqui. Eu vou fazer o quê? Tô tentando.
If you had to summarize each of the country's portfolios, how would you do that? Italy. Give me some
Italy,
words.
they are doing some fantastic technical applications for the Italian Air Force, and they are doing some really advanced biomedical research as well with some of their companies that they're working with.
Excellent. Turkey, it's all about bringing all of Turkey together.
Ele tá falando sobre a Turquia.
Turkey has a truly national portfolio. They have everyone across the country getting involved, from
28
researchers
minutos.
at universities.
Ó, o Sérgio lá ao vivo, ó.
ESA and Sweden, what's their portfolio looking like?
ESA has a very strong focus on research for advancing technology for exploration. So they have lots and lots of really cool technology demonstrations that are going to help human exploration in space in the future.
And tech demos as well. Do you as chief scientist, is that tech demos a different thing, or is it then research, or all part of the same wonderful pot?
They're very much part of the same pot. So all the technology demonstrations that take place are built on a lot of research, and they often feed into future research that will take place.
Design do countdown roubado da SpaceX. Mas é a SpaceX, cara. Como que é roubado? Se é a SpaceX que tá fazendo lançamento, cara.
Yes, so this is a project from the Italian
Não entendi,
Air Force,
velho.
which is the Italian Space Operations Center, where they've developed some software that's actually going to be analyzing debris in space.
Which is a huge problem.
It's a huge problem. We need to know where stuff is going and stuff is flying so that we can make sure that the space station is out of the way of those kinds of impacts. So that software is also going to be doing some space weather forecasting to help keep crew safe in future.
Space weather forecasting.
Yes, looking at different kinds of space weather from solar flares, for example, that can actually release damaging radiation that can not only damage human cells, but can also damage the electronics in a spacecraft. So you want to avoid that when you can.
Makes sense. Beta amyloids aggregation updated.
Yes.
This is about Alzheimer's research.
Exactly. So beta amyloid is a protein that aggregates together. It forms clumps. It forms amyloid plaques that are found in the brains of humans with Alzheimer's. If we can understand how those aggregates form better, which we can use microgravity to really investigate that, then we can gain insights into Alzheimer's disease and how this terrible neurodegenerative
Estudo de medicina aqui, bioquímica que ela tá falando.
And you talked about that weather forecasting, which is part of radiation. That's a big part. So briefly tell me about the Italian portfolio with radiation research.
Exactly. So they have got some light ion detector hardware that they have built that is going to be analyzing the real-time radiation risk from this kind of space weather. And we also have some companies that have got some advanced materials that they've developed that is designed to shield from some of this radiation in future.
Okay, let's talk about the country of Turkey's research portfolio.
Cara, muito legal, velho. A Turquia, mano. Isso é... mais uma vez, repito, é o primeiro astronauta da Turquia indo para o espaço, cara. Turquia, galera. Brasil, nada.
It's an easy-to-use telemedicine application where the crew actually cough or speak or make vocal noises into an iPad for recordings, and the AI software is then actually able to analyze that and can be used to detect or diagnose infectious diseases, potentially even cardiovascular diseses in future.
Wow.
Posso tentar colocar aqui a legenda, mas não é só em inglês mesmo. Não tem a opção de traduzir automático.
Exactly. So they're working on a very cool project using the JAXA's
Essa legenda é uma merda.
levitating facility where they are melting and then resolidifying some metal alloys in a way that the
Agora tá falando sobre ciência dos materiais agora.
more about the molecular structure of these alloys and helps us understand more about materials research that we can then take that knowledge and
Estudos
apply
de
that
ciências dos
to
materiais.
back down here on Earth.
Ligação.
And ESA and Sweden looking way into the future. Their research is focused on humans in long-term space situations. Tell me about their research projects.
Exactly. So one of their projects is called Orbital Architecture, which is a really fun
Orbital
one.
Architecture.
They're investigating what the effect of the very busy and crowded environment of the International Space Station is, not only on crew cognitive function, but also on the crew's stress responses and also their neural responses. So yes, as you can see, the ISS is very, very busy.
We were talking about that. It seems very crowded.
It's very crowded. So
Caramba, eles vão fazer vários estudos legais.
in different parts of the space station
For example, if you look out the window, if your stress response goes down, do you then perform better in space? And how can we then apply those technologies not only for future spaceflight, but also for engineering and building design back down here on Earth?
There's also a great one on Simon. Now, my question is, Simon, is it more like HAL or TARS?
So it's a bit more like TARS,
Okay,
because
good. Okay.
I'm a big fan of The Martian. But yeah, so Simon is the crew interactive mobile companion. Here he is flying through space. So this is an AI-guided tool that is free flying on station that can help crew with tasks while they're up there. So it's actually
Dispositivo de IA ali, tipo uma Alexa, né? Só que o específico que eles desenvolveram ali era aquele dispositivo que apareceu na imagem. Tipo um assistente pessoal, igual, tipo Alexa, né? Só que é algo ali da Turquia que eles fizeram.
It's going great, Sonia. Thank you very much for that. You know, hearing all that different research really kind of cements how important and unique each mission is.
É o Towers,
Each mission has its own suite of
Interestelar.
research and its own crew that makes up that mission. And mission patches really are a way of showing that symbolism and showing how unique that is, right? So they end up everywhere. There's one in that Dragon capsule. There's a few in that Dragon capsule now, I think, right?
Oh, yeah.
But they end up in white rooms. They end up on orbit. They end up on laptops and notebooks. It's a very big deal for crew to be central in helping design this patch because it's such a lasting mark of their dedication and hard work. And the AX3 crew has put their mark on spaceflight history with the AX3 mission patch. All 4 astronauts are highlighted by their
Olha lá as bandeirinhas lá, ó. Turquia, Espanha, Estados Unidos, Itália e Suécia.
With the commander, Michael Lopez Alegria, holding dual citizenship, 5 national flags mark the top edge. The destination, the International Space Station, is the anchoring element in the middle. And interesting to
Muito
note,
legal.
the ISS resembles pilot's wings, so it should be no surprise, given that all 4 members are indeed pilots. Along the bottom of the patch, we see the mission's motto, the phrase plus ultra, in Latin meaning further, beyond. So together, all of this builds on the mission's theme of exploration and its slogan, exploring further without borders.
Yeah, like you said, they do end up everywhere.
22 minutos para o lançamento, galera.
There's 2 patches in there, one from the Crew 4 mission and one, of course, from the AX2 mission, which also took this capsule to space. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to be flying so much that we are...
Boa noite, Hime. Hoje o conteúdo é de qualidade, não tem goiabas? Pois é, hoje é o conteúdo de qualidade que não dá dinheiro. Goiabada a gente faz depois para ganhar dinheiro.
SpaceX has teams all across the country supporting our missions in key roles, and they're in key locations such as our mission director, our core or crew operations and resource engineer, which you see there on your screen now. And these people are very important. We keep talking about the countdown, and this launch countdown is the framework that syncs all of these teams up together. It's incredibly important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've heard a lot of that today, right? As we're talking, we're hearing these loops or nets, right, of all these flight controllers talking. That's because communication is key. The entire mission, from launch, on orbit, all the way back down to splashdown, is a tightly choreographed dance between all of those parties, and that's where communication comes in.
For sure. It's precise communication specifically is paramount throughout the mission in order to be successful, not just for today and on the way to the station, but continually for the next 2 weeks, all the way through splashdown. Like I mentioned before, we have another team supporting the capsule that's on station for Crew 7. So yeah, it's all the way through until the mission is complete.
Exactly, and highlighting that communication, you see those 2 teams just on your screen there. Those are 2 of the many that work together. So to help facilitate that comm, Axiom Space is connected with that entire network of participants through MCCA in Houston, our mission control center at Axiom headquarters. That's what you see on the right there. And from SpaceX, NASA, and other international space agencies and researchers, we can talk together. So there are teams monitoring and participating in this mission around the world, including mission controllers in Japan and across...
Isso é perigoso, eles podem morrer? Sim, é perigoso, tem riscos.
Yeah. Now,
É um lançamento para o espaço.
Let's check back in with International Space Station Mission Control Center.
Sempre há riscos envolvidos.
Courtney, how are things looking over there?
Hey Kate, the space station team here in Houston is focused on
Agora a equipe lá da NASA em Houston, é essa galera aí, ó.
ahead of launch. The teams have verified the command path from the ground up through our constellation of communication satellites to the station, and everything is looking
Bom, o lançamento desse aqui é mais de 1.000 pessoas trabalhando, cara.
Now, once the AX-3 crew arrives at the station, there will officially be 7 nations aboard the station. They will be greeted by the Expedition 70 crew, NASA astronauts Andy Mogensen, Jasmine McBelly, and Laurel O'Hara, Roscosmos cosmonauts Konstantin Borisov, Oleg Kononenko and Nikolai Chub, and JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa. And once Dragon is fully docked to the station, the team here in Houston will assist the Axiom Space and SpaceX.
Lembrando que esta live está sendo patrocinada pela Insider, galera. Se vocês querem apoiar conteúdos de ciência, querem que eu continue fazendo esses conteúdos aqui em vez de só goiabada, compre uma Tech T-shirt com o cupom e o QR Code aqui em cima. São eles que estão me mantendo aqui ao vivo fazendo esses conteúdos.
Mission control in Houston is go for launch. Now with that, let's connect with Sonia at Kennedy Space Center.
"18 minutos para o lançamento, galera." Tem nada pegando fogo, isso aqui é extremamente normal. Isso aqui é a liberação da pressão através das válvulas, porque você está tendo combustível carregando ali dentro, combustível com temperatura criogênica, está aumentando a pressão interna. Para o foguete não explodir, você tem que liberar a pressão excedente, aí sai nas válvulas. E aí é essa fumaça aí que vocês estão vendo. Hime, cheguei agora. Onde quem está fazendo esse lançamento? Isso aqui é nos Estados Unidos, pad 39A. Na Cabo Canaveral, lançamento com o Falcon 9. A nave em cima, a cápsula, é a Crew Dragon. Astronautas da Europa voando com a SpaceX através da empresa Axiom Space para a Estação Espacial Internacional.
We now see some of these white clouds billowing from the vehicle. This is totally normal during this propellant mode phase. We are currently loading our super chilled, also known as densified liquid oxygen onto the vehicle, as well as rocket grade kerosene, or RP1. We will continue to see these clouds kind of forming, and we'll get even more of them right after those closeout lines complete at T-3 and 2 minutes, when both the first and second stages complete all of its propellant loading. Like I said, everything continues to look great. The crew is currently strapped into their seats. There's a 5-point safety harness. You can think of it like a seatbelt, but it's a little bit more advanced than that. Actually, we see
Eles ainda utilizam combustível sólido nos foguetes? Depende, cara. Geralmente como propulsor lateral em alguns tipos de foguetes específicos. Mas no geral é combustível líquido porque você consegue controlar a aceleração. Combustível sólido você ligou, vai tudo e acabou. Digamos assim, só para uma maneira de a gente entender melhor de forma prática, é como se o combustível sólido não tivesse freio, sabe? E o líquido você controla a injeção ali. Mas muitas das vezes, dependendo do design do projeto, é melhor o combustível sólido em determinados foguetes.
That we have a repeat flyer on Dragon. That's Commander MLA. He flew on the Axiom 1 mission. And it's so exciting to see him flying once again in Dragon today. He's pretty much an expert at this point.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you for that update, Kate. And now for an update from Sonia Gavankar at Kennedy Space Center with Deputy Administrator Bill Nelson.
Aí vai ter uma fala agora do Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson, NASA Administrator.
many decades worth of great relationships in the private sector with the commercial sector. Is this a winning strategy for the future? I know NASA is looking now further than Leo into going to the moon and even further. What does this look like going further, and what are we building on?
It's the new era of the golden age of space adventurism. We go back to the moon, for example, not only with our commercial partners and, the two landers.
Qual é, Hime? Esse furo-domo? Fura, esse aí furo-domo.
Companies, but we also go back to the moon with our international partners. And that's quite a difference from a half century ago when we first went to the moon. And that's the way that our space flight is in low Earth orbit as well. Look at the international cooperation on the space station. Look at now the commercial operation on the space station as evidenced by this flight here today.
This moment really is that culmination of that international partnership, private, commercial, all of these things building on each other. How important is this for NASA to develop these commercial partnerships and across varying fields? I mean, Axiom Space, of course, building the Axiom station. We're working on the suits that'll be worn on the moon by the Artemis crew. How important are these partnerships for NASA?
Well, it's essential. We want to get out of low Earth orbit. We want to go and explore the cosmos. And so, the more that we can bring commercial business off the face of the earth.
Pior que a referência é isso mesmo, Léo Siqueira. Obrigado pelo superchat. A referência é essa mesmo.
Replace the International Space Station when it launches out in 2030 with a commercial space station.
Filme do Wall-E.
Then we can become a person who rents space to train our astronauts before we send them out to the moon and on to Mars. Or the business aspect, pharmaceutical research, pharmaceutical production, all kinds of different research utilizing the properties of microgravity in space.
So you're seeing the Axiom station as an expansion of the area that is available to do this work, and this dynamic shift between NASA and organizations like Axiom Space really offers something new to the landscape. This really is the next golden age, isn't it?
Well, and Axiom is one of several that are now with incentive money from NASA building their concepts of a space station for low Earth orbit. And I am certainly hopeful that they are going to be successful, and that increasingly as they do research in space, they're finding out that there's a business case in order that
Ele está basicamente falando sobre a importância de você ter o objetivo, né, que eu sempre falei aqui nesse canal com esses lançamentos de agora, né, que é mostrar, divulgar e impulsionar a indústria para o espaço, porque você tem dinheiro literalmente ali, né, tipo empresas desenvolvendo produtos, estudos e, enfim, todas essas coisas na órbita abaixo da Terra, né? E esse é o objetivo, não é à toa que se fala Commercial Crew Program, programa de tripulação comercial.
The training teams that got us here, that prepared this very professional team of astronauts to go to the International Space Station on this very historic mission. First, the NASA teams both at Johnson Space Center in Houston and at Marshall and Huntsville, Alabama. Then to our international partners, ESA at the European Astronaut Center in Cologne, Germany, and Scuba near Tokyo in Japan. And the Axiom team, whose help really was important when it got down to training for all the payloads that we'll be doing, over 30 experiments, as I think you've heard. So we're excited and very thankful to all those guys, but last but not least,
cerca de 30 experimentos, caramba.
whose very capable hands we find ourselves right now, that's SpaceX. Thanks to everybody. Without you, we couldn't have been here. Now let's go do it.
10 minutos pro lançamento, hein, galera?
Great view of our AX-3 crew there, strapped in and ready for liftoff just over 10 minutes from now.
Dragon SpaceX. Confirmed crew displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, the displays are so configured, and do you mind if I say a few words here, Jake?
MLA, I do not mind at all. You've got the floor.
Mudar esse título aqui para ver se ajuda.
Vision and the conviction to help Axiom open access to humans to low Earth orbit, and they are the Italian Air Force and its various ministries of its government, the Space Technologies Research Institutes of Turkey, TÜBİTAK, and the Turkish Space Agency and its ministry, as well as the Swedish National Space Agency in tandem with ESA. And I also want to thank the team. If you're listening to this through an earpiece sitting in Hangar X and Launch Control or in Hawthorne and Mission Control, you're on the team. And the same is true of people.
Jailson Carneiro mandou superchat, muito obrigado, cara. Acelera esse lançamento aí, Hime. Tem uma aula daqui a pouco. Vou ligar pra NASA aqui, velho. Peraí. Ligar agora. Alô, NASA. 8 minutinhos, cara. 8 minutinhos pro lançamento.
And of course the engineers, technicians, managers and executives who over decades designed, assembled, and are now operating the most complex vehicle in the world that we have the privilege to go visit. Same is true for the visionaries who conceived and developed this amazing rocket that we're sitting on and the beautiful and capable capsule that we're sitting in. And if you're in the Rescue Ops Center, you guys are on the team. And of course, so are our friends and families who have given us their love and support from the very first step of this journey. And last but not least, the team at Axiom Space, the people who have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this. To the four of us that are lucky enough to man the good ship Freedom at this point, are humbled to be on the team. We're grateful to our teammates, and we are go for launch. Plus ultra.
Bora, galerinha do Instagram. Live agora dos astronautas indo para ISS. Chega aí, ó. Estamos ao vivo aqui.
I'll let you know you've got a whole bunch of people rooting for you here and indeed all over the world. Godspeed, Axiom 3.
Some really nice words there coming to us from Commander Michael Lopez Alegria. We are now approaching 7 minutes until liftoff of the AX-3 crew. The next event that we'll hear is
7 minutos para o lançamento.
has begun.
Engine chill has started.
Engine
Just
2
on
has
time, that
started.
call-out tells us that we are now flowing a little bit of the super chilled liquid oxygen through the engines, through those turbo pumps to help bring the temperature down of that hardware. This helps us to reduce any chance of thermal shock whenever the full flow of that super chilled liquid oxygen flows into the engines. Box load continues for Falcon 9. We're fully...
Stage 1, RP1 load is complete.
Aí, terminou de carregar oxigênio líquido lá no primeiro estágio. Não, é o RP1, é o combustível. É oxidante e combustível. Oxigênio líquido e RP1, que é Rocket Propellant, propelente de foguete. Basicamente, petróleo altamente refinado. É como se fosse um querosene de aviação, só que diferente.
There at the launch site, we're launching out of pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center. We are 60% go for those weather conditions, which we're always keeping an eye on around the Florida airspace.
Sim, Thales, obrigado pelo superchat. Eles estão indo para a Estação Espacial Internacional. O voo vai durar talvez umas 10, 12 horas. Então, amanhã de manhã, no horário local aqui de Brasília, mais ou menos amanhã de manhã que eles chegam lá na Estação Espacial.
Propellant remains underway. We are completely loaded with all of our RP1, that rocket grade kerosene. We're still underway.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strong back retract. Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
So like Kate mentioned, we are heading into terminal count.
Tá aí, né, galera? 4 minutos e 45 para o lançamento.
That the Falcon 9 tanks are pressurized for strong back retraction. The strong back is that white structure you see to the right of the vehicle right now. That's used not only to connect the vehicle's umbilicals, but also as a structural support system.
The strong back is retracting.
Up until it begins to
Galera, goiabada é no outro canal. Já avisei vocês.
The rocket out to the launch side and pull it into its vertical orientation ahead of launch. Now we'll keep an eye on it as it retracts slightly here on your screen.
We'll be able to see those clamp arms begin to open.
Olha lá, strong back retract.
And then that strong back will retract a couple degrees away.
Olha lá, o anel que segura ali o foguete, ó, tá abrindo. Agora a torre vai para trás, que é essa parte da direita ali, ó. 3 minutos do lançamento, hein, galera?
As I mentioned before, RP1 is completely loaded onto the vehicle. We're still loading liquid oxygen onto the first and second stage. And obviously some happy cheers as the crowd is growing outside of Mission Control Hawthorne.
É agora que geral grita, hein?
It's always awesome to have an astronaut.
A galera grita pra caramba quando o lançamento acontece. Muito legal. Deixa eu ver se tem algum buffer aqui pra melhorar. Ah, tem um pouquinho de atraso, tá vendo? Aí, ó, primeiro estágio que tá totalmente descarregado já.
At liftoff stage 1, combined between that RP1.
Terminal count and is on internal power.
There's confirmation that Dragon is on internal power and headed into the final minutes of our countdown. As I was saying earlier, at liftoff, Falcon 9 will be burning nearly 700 gallons of fuel per second.
Mais uma vez, galera, se vocês apoiam este tipo de conteúdo aqui no Brasil, em português, comprem uma camisa da Insider. O cupom está aqui em cima. É dessa maneira que a gente mostra para as empresas que elas devem patrocinar conteúdos desse tipo e não as porcarias que a gente vê na internet. Não deixem os criadores de conteúdo que fazem esse tipo de conteúdo morrerem.
Confirmation there that Dragon is in auto idle. Wow, great view of 39A on your screen right there as we head toward launch.
Olha lá a imagem mais de longe como é que fica. 1 minuto e 30 para o lançamento, galera.
Call out to our crew there that loud venting is expected.
O cupom é Felipe 12. O primeiro link na descrição é o link da loja da Insider.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
There's that
Dragon is in countdown.
confirmation that Falcon 9 is in startup and Dragon is in countdown, which means that the vehicles are now controlling the final seconds as we lead up to liftoff.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
40 segundos, galera!
Go for launch.
We are go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Tudo ok pro lançamento acontecer, hein? T-minus
T-minus 15.
10. Aí vai falar. Vai, hein? Agora, hein?
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
Ignition. E vai. Ó, os caras tão bravos já, meu irmão. Já virou rotina, caralho. Já virou rotina, galera. Bonitão aí, ó.
Further beyond, opening the door for more to follow. Godspeed AX3.
Godspeed AX3.
Of course, if you are just joining us, this is the launch of the Axiom 3 launch to the International Space Station. Those incredible views on your
Olha,
screen.
os brabo aí, ó.
Shot of the AX3 crew inside Dragon on ascent. Now, in just a few seconds here, we should hear the call out that Falcon 9.
Stage 1 throttle down.
There's that call out that Falcon 9's engines are throttling down to help us pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure during ascent.
Max Q.
There's that call out for Max Q,
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
and that Falcon 9 is going faster than the speed of sound. Now, at this point, we will begin to throttle Falcon 9's engines back up.
Stage 1 throttle up.
There's that
Okay.
call out for mission control as well, as our AX3 crew continues on their way to space.
We're now T plus 1 minute and 32 seconds into flight. The next event we have is MVAC chill, similar to what
Invac chill underway.
there's that call telling us that, again, we're flowing a little bit of that super chilled liquid oxygen.
Bravo. Copy 1 Bravo.
That call there was one of the abort mode callouts that the crew is
Tudo
calling
certo.
out as they are
Chegando agora na separação do primeiro estágio.
Now we're less than 30 seconds or a few seconds away from 4 events that will happen in rapid succession. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, as it's there on the bottom of your screen, stage separation, ignition of the first stage engine, and the first stage's boost back burn.
Stage 1 throttle down.
That call telling us that the engines are beginning to throttle down.
Miko. Stage separation confirmed.
SpaceX Dragon 2.
Separação confirmada, galera.
Some loud cheers here as we can see that the
Primeiro estágio agora para voltar.
first and second stage.
Pousar lindamente.
A beautiful view there.
Segundo estágio continua.
Is the second stage under power of the MVAC engine. That first stage booster is now heading back toward the Florida coast. One thing I love about daylight launches is we're going to get some amazing views. We should be able to see the Space Coast come back into view as the first stage gets closer and closer to landing zone 1.
3.000 km/h é pouco. O segundo estágio já está subindo lá para mais de 6.000. E a ideia para ficar em órbita é chegar em 27.000.
On your screen, 114, 115 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and it's going to keep coasting for a little bit. Beautiful view there on the right-hand side of your screen of that
Stage
MVAC
1
engine.
boost back shut down.
Se o foguete passar por cima do Brasil, tem uma taxa do amor para pagar.
Included on the
Tem uma
first
taxinha
stage.
assim.
Everything looks nominal with the second stage trajectory. Everything also looking good.
Vocês gostam das zoeiras, né? Puta
Everything
merda.
looking good on the first stage as well as we see those grid fins begin to deploy.
SpaceX Dragon loud and clear.
Ah lá, tá subindo, ó. 7.000 km
Now, the next two
no
major
segundo
events we're
estágio.
tracking for the first stage, which right now is on the left-hand side of your screen, is going to be the entry burn at about T plus 6.5 minutes, where we'll light 3 of Falcon 9's first stage engines, followed shortly thereafter by the landing burn at T plus 7 minutes and 32 seconds, which will be a single engine burn to bring us back to landing zone 1 at Kennedy's.
Caramba, galera, 260 pessoas, olha o número de likes, galera. Poxa vida, conteúdo de ciência, galera. Deixa o like
And
aí,
you can, of
cara.
course, always keep an eye on their telemetry down in the bottom corner of your screen. At this point, we should be just about a minute and a half away from that entry burn start.
Sim, Will, independente do peso da nave e foguete.
Continue on a nominal trajectory with Dragon.
A sua pergunta que você fez aí no chat, eu li aqui agora.
and acknowledgement from the crew.
Velocidade de escape tem a ver com a aceleração ali.
These are incredible views on your screen right here. Again, the left-hand side
Você
of your
faz a
screen is
conta
stage 1,
e você chega qual é na velocidade de escape.
and stage 2, you see that
Só que aqui você não está alcançando a velocidade de escape, tá? Aqui você está alcançando a velocidade orbital, que é a velocidade necessária para você ficar em órbita, tá bom? O foguete ele não precisa, aliás, ele não faz isso, ele não atinge a velocidade de escape para esses lançamentos aqui, a não ser que você queira realmente sair da Terra e ir embora. Ninguém está saindo da Terra para ir embora, tá? Vai ficar girando em torno da Terra na ISS, entendeu? Então você não precisa, aliás, até mesmo para ir embora, digamos, para outro planeta, você também vai fazer a velocidade orbital, porque você fica numa órbita chamada Parking Orbit, como se fosse de estacionamento, para poder esperar acontecer a configuração específica do plano de voo e você depois acelerar e ir em direção ao lugar que você quer, entendeu? Então você fica nessa órbita assim de espera, girando em torno da Terra ali até ter todas as configurações específicas para poder ir para Marte, por exemplo, para Vênus ou para outros lugares.
Stage 1, entry burn, shutdown.
Olha lá, ó. Segundo estágio está indo, ó, 13 mil quilômetros agora por hora. E o primeiro está voltando para pousar. Já está numa altitude baixa até, 23 quilômetros.
As we heard the call out,
Tá descendo.
that entry burn has concluded. The next burn will be the landing burn. As I mentioned before, we're heading back to landing zone 1. We're going to come through the clouds right now.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Everything continues to look nominal
SpaceX Dragon, recon.
for the second stage there on the right-hand side of your screen. These views really are breathtaking. Such clear, crisp views of both the first stage on the left and the second stage on the right. Right through with these clouds should be our first view. Once again, there it is. Just like magic, we see landing zone 1.
Aí, ó. Duas câmeras bonitonas, hein? Olha lá! Olha lá!
Steering here at
Olha lá!
Control Hawthorne.
Porra, meu irmão. Isso já é...
Tune in to see if we stick the landing.
Isso aí já é rotina, meu irmão. Rotina. É mais um dia de trabalho comum como todos os outros dias. Rotina, galera. Porra.
Loud cheers. We did.
Bonitão. Brabo demais.
Stick that landing. Falcon 9 has landed once again, but turning our attention back to the crew, as you see there, our next event.
Bora, segundo estágio agora. Pô, é muito foda, cara. É uma pena que no Brasil a gente não tem essas coisas, velho. Puta merda, cara.
Dragon is commanded to separate a lot of the
Foda
energy
demais.
here as SpaceX mission control is buzzing. You can hear commentary behind us. Right now, the crew is experiencing about 3 Gs, so pretty much a roller coaster for those thrill seekers out there.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
And we are about 20 seconds away from that second engine cutoff.
Aí, ó, agora vai desligar o segundo motor. Segundo motor não, desculpa. Vai desligar o motor do segundo estágio.
Copy, Shannon.
As another abort mode there being called out. Now standing by for second engine cutoff.
Impact shutdown.
Aí, ó. Tá vendo ali a velocidade? O que eu falei?
There we heard those call-outs.
Ali, ó. 27 mil quilômetros por hora.
Nominal orbital insertion.
Launch escape system disarmed.
Por que desliga o motor? Porque agora, como eu falei, tem todo um plano de voo. Agora, eles vão esperar chegar até uma posição específica para acelerar de novo, porque tudo faz parte de uma série de etapas que você tem que fazer para poder atingir a órbita, que é onde está a ISS, Estação Espacial Internacional, 400 mais ou menos, arredondando quilômetros de altitude. E aí você tem que ficar na mesma velocidade que ela, entrar no que chama de esfera gravitacional da ISS, tem toda a configuração de manobras, etc. Tudo automático, tá, galera? Tudo automático pelos algoritmos da Crew Dragon ali, da nave. para chegar na mesma altitude, e aí você vai ter o acoplamento acontecendo da nave com a PMA2, se não me falha a memória, Pressurized Mating Adapter 2. Cadê o Pedro? Tá aí? Pedro Cardoso, membro do canal. Tá aí, não é isso? Ou eu tô errado? Se não me falha a memória, não é isso? É ou não é? PMA2. Que é o anel lá de... o adaptador ali para acoplar a nave, a Dragon na ISS.
More views there of our AX-3 crew on board Dragon.
Hime, como tem ar respirável dentro da ISS, da mesma maneira que tem ar respirável dentro de um avião.
We are now just about 30 seconds away from that anticipated Dragon separation.
Aí, agora a nave vai separar, a cápsula Crew Dragon vai separar do segundo estágio do foguete.
And a great shot of mission control here in our headquarters at Hawthorne, California.
Thales mandou outro superchat, muito obrigado, cara. O foguete fica preso a essa velocidade pela órbita? Sim. Exatamente. Conforme você vai aumentando a velocidade, olha aí, a separação. Já te explico, peraí. Aí, ó, soltou o segundo estágio. Agora tá só a cápsula, só aquela navezinha que estava no topo. É ela que vai em direção à ISS.
That will return the AX-3 crew back to Earth in just about 2 weeks. So this is our first view of AX-3 flying free.
Sim, o ar é reciclado, Giovanni, na ISS.
That we will see will be the deployment of the nose cone. That will take.
Dragon, this is the SpaceX Falcon team. We want to congratulate you on a great ride to orbit. I think you're demonstrating the ultimate in reuse, a reused Commander, a reused Dragon, and a reused Falcon. Or maybe flight experience is a better word. Enjoy space.
And Axiom 3, no Durst, and as I was saying, it's a team sport. Thank you guys.
Como que eles fazem? Na ISS é principalmente por eletrólise. Pega a água, separa dióxido de carbono e oxigênio. Tem um sistema lá que eles chamam de sistema de suporte à vida. Você separa por eletrólise mesmo, e aí você gera o oxigênio ali necessário para criar essa atmosfera dentro da ISS para todo mundo respirar, né? Aí você tem um sistema fodão lá que vai avaliando qualidade do ar, filtragem, essas coisas todas. Hime, qual seria a principal dificuldade na construção de uma estação espacial com gravidade artificial? A principal dificuldade é você... São pessoas com o tipo Super Xandão. É sério, não tô zoando. Porque você tem que mostrar um bom projeto e reunir diversas empresas junto com também o Estado para ter risco dividido e convencer as pessoas de que fazer exploração espacial é algo foda que avança a humanidade. Como a gente não consegue fazer isso, porque fazer conteúdo lixo dá muito mais dinheiro e audiência do que conteúdo científico, a gente não tem pessoas suficientes que consigam suportar estas ideias, torcer para que deem certo, inclusive estudar essas coisas sabe? E poder participar da construção dessas coisas incríveis. Então, isso acaba tendo uma implicação direta na maneira como a gente coloca políticos na sociedade e também na maneira que a gente tem de criar tecnologia, empresas e indústria. Ou seja, esse é o principal problema, porque no fim do dia pode até ser que seja possível, mas ninguém quer fazer.
And already getting right down to the business of operating Dragon. You can still see a huge number of our team gathered behind mission control.
Dragon SpaceX, we see nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
And confirmation that we're getting nominal checkouts of those Draco thrusters on board Dragon.
Ali é Hawthorne, o nome do lugar, da SpaceX. É a quartel-general, né? Headquarters da SpaceX. Fica em Hawthorne, Califórnia. Olha lá, 3 telão por cada PC, hein? 3 telão.
So for those of you that have just recently tuned in, AX3 is in space. The crew is experiencing their first taste of
Hime, poderia dizer o que acontece com o segundo estágio, por favor? Tem vídeo aqui no canal explicando sobre o segundo estágio. Resumindo, nada. Ele não tem uma reentrada controlada. Ou ele vai para uma órbita lixo, que se chama, que fica eternamente girando em torno da Terra, Graveyard Orbit, ou ele reentra e cai no oceano. Mas a reentrada não é controlada, igual o primeiro estágio. Isso aí é só na Starship, né? Que é a ideia de fazer com a Starship.
Overall, it was a pretty smooth flight, all the way through countdown to liftoff. We're now approaching 17 and a half minutes into flight. Once again, the next milestone will be to deploy the nose cone. This is basically the last physical change that Dragon will undergo.
Traduzindo, não tem garantias que não vai cair na casa de alguém? Cara, é muito difícil isso acontecer, embora aconteça. Já caiu, já. Já caiu aqueles tanques de... COPs, que chama, né? Aqueles tanquezinhos de pressão, acho que é de nitrogênio, agora eu não lembro. Tem uns tanquezinhos que você utiliza justamente para você controlar as pressões internas em alguns sistemas ali dentro do foguete. Aí esses tanques, geralmente, eles sobrevivem a uma reentrada na atmosfera. Aí já teve, inclusive no Brasil. Caiu lá numa fazenda de um cara lá no sul. Belo dia ele acorda e olha lá na fazenda, tem a porra de um tanque ali. Aí quando foram olhar, descobriram que era o bagulho da SpaceX, velho.
Again, this allows us to expose the docking mechanism, the hardware that will be utilized to dock with the International Space Station.
Existem projetos para controlar esse segundo estágio? Não. Todos os esforços estão direcionados para a Starship, que é totalmente reutilizável.
Technically, they were already in by the time that we started our broadcast, but the crew did ingress Dragon today, just a couple hours ago, through that side hatch. That remains closed. That won't open again until they are safely back on Earth.
Sim, já caiu na Bahia também. É verdade, Torg. Já caiu na Bahia também.
Basically, opening the first part of a multi-system door for them to get in and out of the International Space Station. I mentioned before that docking is autonomous. That means that Dragon does the steering itself. Our pilot, Walter Vilade, has the training and the capability to take control if necessary, but nominally speaking, Dragon flies on autopilot.
Tô fazendo live ao mesmo tempo respondendo aqui a galera que tá perguntando dúvidas sobre a viagem da Islândia.
Which at the end of the day is ultimately much safer than human steering, as you know, there's more that humans are prone to error because we are human. So that's a live view there of SpaceX Mission Control Center here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. It is in the middle of our workday, so of course many folks have returned to their positions, their desks, their job, and they are continuing to do what we do best, and that's build spacecraft and rockets and send people to space, just like we have done today. So with that, let's check in over with Courtney, who is standing by at the ISS Mission Control Center in Houston. Courtney, how are things looking over there? It's over to you.
Hey Kate, everything is great. What a beautiful launch today. And with today's successful launch of AX-3, the teams at NASA's Johnson Space Center will be monitoring Dragon's flight to the International Space Station over the next 36 hours. NASA's role in this journey really kicks in at a period called Integrated Operations, where Dragon is much closer to the station. At this point, NASA, SpaceX, and Axiom space teams are all in lockstep to get the crew safely docked. The teams here are preparing for a docking of AX-3 to the station on Saturday morning. For now,
Viu, ó, Saturday morning, que ela acabou de falar aqui. Foi o que eu falei antes pra vocês.
Saturday for docking. And for now, we'll send it back to you, Kate and John.
Thanks, Courtney.
Aí vai ter outra live sábado de manhã pra mostrar o docking, a acoplagem. E aí a gente faz, vamos fazer? Ih, não vou poder fazer não, galera. Se bem que também não dá audiência nenhuma essa merda. Mas não vou poder fazer não. Aniversário do meu avô de 80 anos, eu vou lá ficar com ele. Fazer um churrasquinho lá pra ele e tal. Então eu não vou poder fazer essa live, tá, galera? Vocês assistam lá no Seja, Space Today. Tá bom?
Something that would be my favorite part, enjoy their first meal aboard the spacecraft. Over the course of their flight, they will have a rest period that will last for about 8 hours. Before they arrive at the space station, we will have 2 potential opportunities to chat briefly with the crew on orbit, one around 3:15 p.m. Pacific and another around 6:20 p.m. Pacific.
Dragon SpaceX, environments look good for suit doffing, and the cabin camera is soon to be configured. You're go for suit doffing.
Copy, we'll put 4.012 in order.
All right, so that call out there just saying that the crew is clear to take off their suits.
230 pessoas é pouco? Sim. Num canal de 225 mil inscritos, ter 230 pessoas numa live de lançamento de foguete é pouca pessoa comparado ao meu canal que tem 3 mil inscritos e ficam às vezes 500 pessoas para assistir react. Mas eu não tô reclamando não, tá, galera? Eu só tô avisando só. Eu já tô ganhando dinheiro com um canal de react lá, reagindo a lixo na internet. Eu não me importo não, eu já tô de boa, eu tô só comentando pra vocês aqui, pra vocês saberem. Não tô reclamando de nada não. Enquanto tiver apoio da Insider patrocinando e a galera comprando camisa, eu vou fazer aqui as lives. Pode ter 10 pessoas que eu vou fazer a live, tá bom?
And then, as Dragon and the AX-3 crew approach the International Space Station early on the morning of January 20th, we will pick back up with our live joint coverage of the AX-3 crew's docking to station with NASA. So please keep an eye on Axiom and SpaceX social channels for updates, as there'll be plenty of incredible moments to share with you over the course of their mission. So from all of us at Axiom Space, thank you SpaceX, thank you NASA, and thank you for tuning in. This is just the beginning, and we hope to see you soon.
Acabou a live da SpaceX. Vai ter live goiabada hoje, continuando a treta dos gigantes da Ilha do Mel? Vamos lá, galera, vamos lá. Vou botar a live para 10 da noite lá no outro canal. Vamos lá fazer dinheiro, então. Vou finalizar essa daqui, que acabou mesmo, tá bom? Mais uma vez, se alguém quiser sair e fugir um pouquinho do Brasil, tem uma vaga restando lá no grupo de viagem da Islândia. E daí a gente vai junto, é um grupo de 10 pessoas, a gente vai junto, a gente conversa sobre isso e muito mais coisas lá na Islândia, tá bom? E vou colocar a live para 10 da noite, lá de Goiabada, do outro canal. Eu vou fazer o contrário, vou para academia mais cedo agora e na volta a gente vai lá fazer react. Não é isso? Vamos lá fazer dinheiro. Valeu, galera, tamo junto. Qualquer coisa, só perguntar aí, manda no Insta lá. É nóis. Valeu!